Good evening, folks. Welcome back to another Monday night live stream. Hope everybody's well. Hope you had a fantastic weekend. Hope you've all managed to get a little bit of hobby in. Maybe it's a bit of painting. The weather wasn't particularly good this weekend, so perfect hobby weather. Never mind these sunny days where you'd rather be out having a barbecue and a beer. Perfect hobby weather is on its way. Let's have a look. He says, knocking the microphone flying. Let's have a look and see which wonderful folks we've got joining us in the chat this evening. We had the Super Pumpkin Man. Hello, matey. How you doing? He was in nice and early saying good morning. Good morning to you. Mark Burcloth, hello to you, sir. We got Blizzards in as well. Lance Richardson, Type 40 TARDIS, Mighty Dice. Hello to you fine folks. Dave Mackay. We got Roger29, Shane Dwyer, Mark's Dice Tales, Colin Mack. We've got Ed, Major Tom there. Hello. We have the legend. That is Mr. Christian Reeves. How are you doing, sir? Hope you're doing well. John Estel saying it's nice to be in after a long day. I can imagine, mate. Wayne Haywood, hello to you. Yoakum, nice to see you as well, sir. We've got the Tasty Brain Drain saying just made it in time. Alder Bill's in. We've got Tyrion says hi from Nottingham. Hello from Newcastle, mate. How you doing? We got Matt in. Good evening, Matt. Graham Riggs saying hello. James Zorm. We've got Double Dip. We've got James Braze in there as well. He says, trying to tipping over his words. We've got Raphael in as well. He says, greetings from Belgium. Hello to you. Welcome to the chat. Richard Bradley says, why I man from down south. Hello, Richard. How you doing? Nigel Jones, good evening to you. He said he's going to catch up on the replay. Thank you very much for popping in, buddy. We've got Otinian says greetings. We've got Jimmy Moresco as well. Says hello from Texas. Hello to you as well, mate. Phil Campbell's in. We've got Busey in as well. Says any updates on the energy crisis? We're not talking energy crisis today, mate. It's not getting any better. Let's be fair, but you know, I talked about it last week. That was last week's topic. Tonight is going to be a little bit more lighthearted, a little bit more fun, a little bit more smiles. It doesn't mean I'm any happier about the situation, but you know what you're going to do. You got to move on, haven't you? Tony Howell, good evening to you, buddy. How are you doing? Hope lives. Howdy, folks. He says hello, and Holy Ghost Games says evening. Solo games is a great way to get some games in. So yes, we are talking solo games tonight, but I'm not talking about solo games and I'm not going to give you like a list of all the different games that are available. I'm sure most of you that are aware of solo games already know what the kind of the more popular ones are, or the ones that you like. We're going to be talking about really my thoughts on solo war games. Are they for me? Are they for you? Should we, as in you and I, should we be playing more solo games? Should we not be playing solo games? All of that kind of chat. So I'm going to be giving you kind of like 9 or 10 sort of how can I put this? Sort of talking points, shall we say. And I'm going to talk through them, and then it's going to be open to the chat, and you can tell me how you feel about it and what games you like. So you can talk about the games. I'm in my kind of little section, my main topic tonight. I'm not going to be talking about individual different games and which ones to recommend. But you can certainly talk about them in your chat as well. Klavak, good evening to you. We got Robin Mankiller says, "Zup, good sir." I'm very well, thank you for asking there. Super Punky Man says, have to watch on my phone today as my laptop is downloading Warhammer Vermintide 2 on Steam. Talk about getting your priorities wrong, mate. You can download Warhammer Vermintide anytime you want. Tonight is stream. You do what you want, buddy. Good morning, VJ. How you doing, lad? Nice to see you in as well. Tony says, I've been a good boy and hit like for the stream. Please take a second to hit that like button too. Yes, please. If you all want to be a nice little folks as well, please do hit the like button. Little folks sounded really patronising there. I didn't mean that. I just meant like kind of like I was thinking of Tony being like a nice little boy. Like when he's been a good boy, I was thinking, there's a good little boy. That's what I meant. I wasn't being trying to be patronising. The Mad Moderator says, good evening all. Billy No Mates here, living in Switzerland. I'm Billy No Mates here, living in Newcastle, mate. We're all friends together here tonight. Matt says, I wish there were more versus games that could also be played solo. We'll talk about that kind of stuff, mate. We've got Caboose Wannabe says, found out this channel when learning about God Tier. Welcome to the channel. Welcome to God Tier. He said, try to show my friends that were interested in trying out wargaming and thought it wasn't for them. So I'm here to see if I should try solo war games. Well, we'll chat about that soon, mate, as well. Jim W, good evening to you as well. Skulldoggery says, good afternoon. We've got Alex Hunter in, says, greetings from an excessively sunny Orlando. Orlando is always sunny, mate. My experiences of being in Orlando is anyway. My two sons, my oldest sons are in Orlando at the moment, actually. I think they come home on, what is it, Friday? Maybe this Friday they come home. I think it's this Friday they fly home. But yeah, they're in there. They're in Florida at the moment. Ed says, solo games for me are for practice. I've never really looked at intentionally solo games. Yeah, I'll not give too much of it away, but we'll get to that kind of that chat and stuff in a minute. Connor Armstrong, good evening, mate. How you doing? Jez is saying, is Andy going to tell us about playing with yourself? We had that comment in the Patreon today. Somebody had said, I'm always playing with myself. Is that a problem? I said that some pursuits should always be solo experiences. Robin Mankiller says, building Z Demon Girls. Very nice. Dave McKay is going to make you work for the like tonight. I work for the likes every week, mate. That's my job, to work for the likes. I'm like sort of just pimping myself out, mate, just for the applause. That's what it is. Busey says, Blackstone Fortress, never played it though. I've still never played Blackstone Fortress either, mate. I don't have it, which is probably why I've never played it, but yeah, I don't have it. Tasty Brain Train says he's already hit the button. We've got 92 people and 49 likes. I think that's about, what's that, 40 odd people I've got to make sure I work hard for now. Although I suppose you could all hit the like button again and unlike it, couldn't you? Type 40 Tortoise is chilling while he's working on some Armada Basilians. Solo gaming is all in. The Button says, morning. Popping in to say hi before work. Good morning. Don't work too hard. Take care, buddy. I'm assuming you're over in Australia, New Zealand, over that direction. Please don't work too hard today. Have a good day. Down Under Blunder says, good morning from Middle Earth. Definitely from New Zealand. Phil Campbell says, you managed to flog a couple of t-shirts and we're little people. Yeah, that's what I meant. I didn't mean that. I instantly thought, bloody hell, that sounds terrible. That wasn't what I meant. Yeah, Super Punky Man says, nerds of the world unite, 100%. Mark says, due to my misophonia. Is that misophonia? Solo games is becoming more of a must, unfortunately. I don't think I know what that is, mate. I'll have to Google it later. Caboose Wannabe says, I'm from Orlando too. Well, if you see two English, I'm sure there's a lot of English people in Florida, but if you see two English sort of 20-year-old young lads, they're probably really, really white-skinned no matter how long they've been there, because they just stay indoors and keep out of the sun all the time. They'll probably be looking a little bit tired, a bit worn out. It's probably Tony's saying I should come with a virus warning. We need some kind of like McAfee or Norton antivirus for you, mate. Is that what it is? Scott, good evening to you, mate. He says, I hope you're all suitably well. Well, things are good at this end, mate. I hope they are for everybody else as well. Spider Lord said, evening. I like to think I'm an expert playing with myself. This should be interesting. We might want to keep those tips to yourself tonight, mate. Brian Sheen says he stopped playing video games in favour of solo mini games. Interesting, mate. Michael Mangold says he's putting together his Marvel Crisis Protocol core box during the stream. Take care, mate. With, if I remember the parts, Iron Man's a bit fiddly. I think there's a couple of fiddly bits on Spider-Man as well, I think. I'm trying to remember. I'm looking at them now because they're on the shelf over there. Yeah. I think there's a couple of bits on... Is it on Ultron as well? Just follow the instructions, mate. Follow the instructions. Skulldoggery says, on the topic of games with solo play, I'm excited about Vince Venturella and Uncle Adam's new game, Space Station Zero. It's out now, isn't it? Yeah. I bought the book and PDF immediately after watching Vince's Battle Report demo. Yeah, I saw that they'd done some stuff with Miniac. And then I also saw a few people complaining about the poor terrain and stuff like that, like as if to say, like, you know, if you're going to kind of show it off, you think you would have had some nicer stuff. But I think either Vince or Adam had said it was basically that was the terrain that Scott had lying around, kind of thing, so it wasn't their fault. VG says he's got 4 big gigs this week, but Blitz Bowl next week should do, mate. Yeah, I think we'll be able to manage something in. Weekends might be a bit funny because I think basically we've got pretty busy weekends planned for about the next 7 or 8 weeks, I think. So weekends might be a bit tricky, mate. But we'll squeeze a night in somewhere. We'll find a time. Spiderlord says, series though, can you solo wargaming? Board gaming seems fair enough, but there are solo war games, mate. There are some games that are intentionally designed and created to be a solo experience. We'll come on to that and I'll explain about that when we get to the main topic. But yes, you definitely can solo war game, absolutely. Somberlin says, greetings, I have you on the TV screen and on the phone. Said he's waiting for a visitor, probably won't be painting tonight. Well, there you go, mate. Thank you very much for the double view. They all count. I'll take them all, mate. It just means can you like it twice? I'm not even sure. Dave's saying, go on then, you're entertaining usually. I have my moments, mate. You know, how long have I been doing this? I always get it mixed. It's 6 years. I should remember this because I started on my first video ever was on November the 2nd, and it's my son's birthday on September the 30th, and he was born like a month before I did my first ever YouTube video. So however old he is, I should know how long I've been doing this. So I've been doing it 6 years this year. I'm sure in them 6 years I'll have had a couple of entertaining streams, mate. VJ saying, yeah, so good to be busy again. I can imagine, mate. Yeah, and the money doesn't dare come in bad either, does it? Right, that's just massively jumped off the top of my screen there. Double Dip says, is Blackstone Fortress a solo game? It can be, mate. It can be played solo, or it can be played like sort of multiplayer. A little bit like Silver Tower, like Cursed City, all of those Warhammer Quest games. You're basically playing against the game. The enemies are AI controlled or artificial intelligence kind of thing. They have like a way of playing that the game dictates. So that's how a solo war game works, basically. So yes, you certainly can have solo war games. Spiderlord saying Blackstone Fortress is, but it feels more of a board game. I guess it's one of those things about what's the definition of a board game. Like, is it because it's played on a board? I don't necessarily think that's as clear cut as it used to be these days. I think it. How would I describe it in the past? I would probably describe the difference between board games and miniatures games or war games is probably like, I mean, there isn't really a kind of clear distinction. It's probably more down to the fact that I see miniatures games as something more collectible, where there's waves of releases coming out, there's more stuff coming out all the time. It's more of a collectible experience, where I see board games as something a little bit more kind of packaged up, and then you don't need to buy other stuff, kind of thing. I mean, that's not very clear, but that's kind of what I would kind of come back to. Less about these days. I used to think it was whether it was something we used a tape measure or not, but like you know, like whether measuring was a part of it. But certainly, like Dead Zone by Mantic is definitely a war game, and you don't use a tape measure for that, so you can kind of wait. However, VJ, thank you very much, mate. He says, for your solo game fund. Thank you very much for the super chat, buddy. Yeah, Shane Dwyer, hello Shane. He says a lot of new board games intentionally have solo rules as standard. I wish it were the same for war games. It was something that's kind of, I'll be honest, I always struggle to come up with topics for these live streams, and because like I have a little notepad where I write stuff down and I think, oh, that'll be a good topic, and then by the time I come back to it, it's like I can't even remember what my thought process was around that. But this was something that came up when I had the interview with Joe McCulloch, who wrote Frostgrave and Stargrave and all those kind of games. A lot of his stuff have solo elements to them, and we chatted a little bit about kind of about solo wargaming during that interview, and it was one of the things that kind of prompted tonight's discussion. Busey saying, I think you can solo play any game as long as you can get your head around play with it. Yeah, and that is certainly the case. You can play both sides, but that's not really what I'm talking about tonight. I'm not talking about like any game. as in like, well, I'm going to move this army and then I'm going to walk around the other side of the table and I'm going to move the other army. I'm talking about games that are specifically designed to be played like as a solo experience. There are lots of games out there. If you think of The Walking Dead by Mantic, it was the first videos I ever made on YouTube. It was one of the first war games I was playing when I got back into kind of tabletop gaming, and that was a very definite solo experience. You could play it solo, you could play it cooperatively, and you could play it like versus like competitively, but the walkers, the actual zombies themselves, were always controlled by the AI mechanics of the game. So that is what I would class as a designed to be solo game, not a case of like Warhammer 40k where like I'm going to move all my army and then I'm going to kind of go and move the other army as well. Because I tend to find when you play any game like that, if you play a competitive game or a versus game, there's almost this weird meta game goes on in your head that like, well, I'm going to move all of these, and then when I go around the other side, you're thinking, well, I'm going to move these, but I know what I was going to do, because that's what I was planning to do next. So what I'll do is I'll move these to stop that happening. So like, I don't think you can ever truly, I mean, it's good for learning games, but I don't think you can ever truly play a versus game solo. You can play it, but I don't think you get the same experience. The games I'm talking about are designed to be solo, where you play against the game. Paul Inman, little people, you've changed births. I'm not that tall myself, mate. Everybody could be big people now. Spylord said he's just picked up Sniper Elite. That has a solo mode. I don't think I'm aware of that, mate. Of the tabletop game. Colin Mack, good evening, mate. He's looking forward to Kings of War ambush rules. Yeah, me too, mate. I saw it advertised, like sort of announced the other day. It was the first I knew about it. This kind of 500 to 995 points version of Kings of War. They're basically changing the way you build lists. I think like hordes are basically out, and they're changing the way you build the lists, so you can basically put like a load of like sort of smaller troops and stuff in. I think it'll be really interesting. It'll be fun. It might even be interesting to kind of do a little bit of kind of video stuff about it, because I think it's a faster paced game when you've got a lot less models on the table. VJ says, I'm mainly a solo gamer, but I don't really buy board games without a solo mode now. I think a lot of people are kind of like that, mate. Clyde Dashing, thank you very much for the super chat there, mate. What this is the Mantic Solo Game Fund. Thank you very much, buddy. What were we just talking about? Yeah, a lot of people buy games intentionally with the idea of, like, especially when it comes to Kickstarter stuff, a lot of people don't back stuff these days unless the Kickstarter version comes with a solo element. Because let's be honest, we have more time. Sort of like, we can make time to play a game on our own. Sometimes it's a bit harder to make time to play with somebody else. Shane says, yeah, Blackstone had really good AI that I learned it to solo player. Could be brutally difficult on some of the later missions. I guess that's the point, isn't it? You don't want to be easy all the way through. Mark Watson, mate, hello, buddy. He says, the problem with solo gamers finding a decent opponent. The guy I usually play with always manages to be a few moves ahead. And that's exactly, I mean, we're laughing about it here. That's my point about this kind of playing both sides in a versus game. Is like there's this weird meta system of like, well, this is what I'm going to do because that's what I would do next, and then I'm playing the opponent, so I know what the next move is, so I'm going to do this. So when I go back to the other side, well, I know what the next move is going to like, and it doesn't really work out properly. Spidelord saying Baron Zemo's elbow pads. I forgot about them, mate. Mark Horniff says, evening all. He started gluing some Necromunda figures. Worst part of the hobby. Being a fan of solo games since Chainsaw Warrior. Good evening, mate. I'm not a massive fan of building models, if I'm perfectly honest. It's the bit I enjoy the least. Some models I actually quite enjoy building because they feel more like a bit of a puzzle, putting them together. Like, I'm not really a fan of like multi-pose models where you've got to sort of like line up arms and weapons and I'd much rather put together kind of single pose type stuff. Just put like some of the GW minis, for example. Like, I remember this with, I think it was the Curse City minis, because they were the last GW minis I built. Like, some of them almost like you had to like you have to line them up a certain way, and then all of a sudden they kind of slot together and the joins disappear. I quite enjoyed building some of them because they felt almost like a little mini puzzle. Some of the Marvel Crisis Protocol stuff's a bit like that, but yeah, generally I'm not a huge fan of building models. So look, Richard Bradley, hello mate. He says I play 40k with a decent AI random rule system. Have had lots of games. I think that's good. There's a lot of games that where people have developed like solo play rules for them. I remember there being a really good app for X-Wing that somebody had developed, where basically you could like sort of put some like put your moves into an app, or so, if I'm trying to remember it right, and the app would basically tell you what to do with your like opponents' ships, how to move them and stuff. And I thought that was pretty cool. There's lots of people do kind of like fan made stuff. If like actually just out of interest today, I think War Games Illustrated, or was it Tabletop Gaming Magazine? I think it was Tabletop Gaming Magazine. Have got like a free supplement with it, and I think you can get it on their website, which is a Dead Zone solo player sort of mission. So yeah, so you know that people do develop this kind of stuff. Paul says I live on my own, so I have to play with myself. But if you find the right person, playing with yourself can be very enjoyable. The Hexy Beast. He says, well, this is something I know a little bit about. Awesome. I'm glad there's some experienced folks out there. Otini says he's read the SPZ rules and they're pretty light and tight in a good way. I quite like light and tight, mate. Ryan says he's watching live for the first time in a while. Hello, mate. How you doing? He says Aiden says hi and good night in a bit. Aiden, straight to bed, mate. No messing around for your dad tonight, right? I'm watching. I can see you. You might just think you can see me, but I can see you as well. Night, Aiden. Hexy Beast says, I think the best game to try if you want to give solo wargaming a go is Core Space. Core Space, I'm a big fan of. And it's another reason why the solo experience thing came up for something for me to chat about tonight. Because recently I went down to Birmingham, where the HQ for Battle Systems is, and I'd filmed some videos for their upcoming fantasy game, Maladrum. And I really enjoyed playing it. I had an interview with Colin, who owns Battle Systems, and then we did a video where we played through like a mission from the game, and it'll be coming up on the channel later on with Nero when the game's getting ready to launch. But yeah, it was fun, and it's another one of those games where it's basically you can play it solo, you can play it like cooperatively, you can even play it slightly kind of versus each other, but it might kind of suit you to help each other out at certain points. So yeah, you're right. Core Space is a good one. Yeah, VJ saying weekends are busy as well. Yes, we'll sort it, buddy. Hexy Beast says, or if you mean things like Thunderbolt Apache Leader. It's not a game I'm familiar with, mate, so I'm not really sure. Mark says it's pronounced misophonia. It's a selective sound disorder, like people chewing and slapping lips, which causes a fight or flight with the sufferer. Oh, I tell you what, mate, that sounds awful. I hope it's not something that's permanent, mate, and I hope it's something you can sort of recover from quickly. Where the heck are we up to here? Jumping all over the chat. This, I need to go back and find that comment now. Wow, there really is a lot of chat tonight. There we go. Paul Taylor, hello mate, how are you doing? He said it's good to be back for a live stream. Good to have you back. Dev Slavin says firefight progression all night. Good mate, good. Keep on with the firefight. We'll have a little chat about the firefight slow grow as well later on, and about how it's going and stuff, and just making folks aware of it if they're not already involved. It's never too late to get involved. Jim is saying he's been playing one-page rules fantasy skirmish solo and having a blast. The best part is I always win. Holy Ghost Games says Forbidden Psalm and Rangers of Shadow Deep are some great solo games. Just got his hands on Rusty Daggers. I don't think I've heard of Rusty Daggers, mate. And Hexy B says he also runs a solo channel. Please do check him out if you're into your solo games. Ed saying I did play Battle Street Blackstone Fortress solo once, but boy, it's better with friends. We'll come on to that as well, mate. It's a good point. Spoony, nice to see you in. Says I just feel gaming has a huge social aspect to it that obviously solo gaming can never fill. Richard saying he has myelopathy. I can't even pronounce that. In my hands of my hobby of 36 years is over. Oh, I tell you what, mate, that must be awful. Is there things you can do to still kind of stay involved? Routini saying mini war games tend to be more flexible in areas of playing space and characters, where board games are more limited with their playing space and available characters. I wouldn't say that was always the case, mate. There are some board games that are really quite open-ended and flexible as well, I think. Alex said he recently came over the notion of writing solo player rules for most role-playing games in order to better review them, and I think this needs to be done for wargaming. It's one of the things that slows me down a lot when I'm kind of reviewing stuff, is whenever I review something, I make a point I have to play it at least 3 or 4 times, and getting opponents to do that against obviously slows that process down, because I have to be able to teach myself the game in order to be able to teach somebody else the game to play it with me, and then I need to play it sort of like 3 or 4 times and play through multiple scenarios and missions and that kind of thing to make sure I understand it fully before I can kind of form an opinion. I know these days that is, you know, that's unusual. A lot of people will just kind of unbox something and tell you what they think of it, or flick through the rule book and tell you what their initial thoughts. There's not a lot of actual reviews when it comes to tabletop stuff, especially wargaming. But I think it's the same for board games as well, to be fair. Unless you've really played more than the intro mission, I think you're not really giving it a fair crack of the whip, really. Jan Vigo says, "Hoiks up, solo games, love them, never played one. I'm the guy who gets the others into wargaming, but having problem playing solo." Interesting. Matt says, live streams tend to go all over the place. It's just conversations evolving organically. Hello, Matt. You see, to be fair, these ones, we always have a topic, and I have like a piece that I would kind of want to see at the camera that's giving you my thoughts, my opinions, where I'm coming from, clarifying my position about what I'm kind of talking about. And we tend to kind of stay on topic for a while, but then obviously the conversation runs its course. The chat decides where the conversation goes later on, kind of thing. So Luke Pryor, hello mate, how are you doing? Christian sharing the link there as well to help support the hobby from as little as $2 a month and gain access to the Patreon Discord group. Yes, I do have a Patreon, and this is how I fund this crazy venture of me doing this full time. Obviously I make a little bit of money through other kind of sort of ways and means as well around this, but Patreon is my main source of income. So if you want to join the Patreon and help me cover all of those games that maybe nobody else wants to cover because they don't get enough views, this is the place to come and see them. Tony says, I know it's sad, but I solo Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Grab an old dungeon crawler, and yes, you need to switch from player and DM, but I can't do digital and tabletop RPGs. To be honest, mate, there's nothing sad about it at all. Like, that's one thing I would say about solo gaming. No matter what people's opinions are, whether they think, oh, I don't want to play solo, or I only like playing solo, whatever your people's opinions are, if you're having fun, then that is the best way to enjoy your hobby. It doesn't really matter what anybody else thinks. No, like if you do something that not another person in the world does, but you enjoy it, it's how can I be wrong? It's still the right thing to do. Yeah, Hexy Beast is saying he's more of a board gamer. Alex is saying role playing has developed so many tools for playing normally group games as solo. There is a lot of that to come from RPGs, isn't there? And I guess a lot of it is about trying to almost kind of help players through it to simplify some things, or to streamline, I should say, not simplify. Yeah, Matt's just saying there as well, I'm sure this is from further back, but he's saying about the problem with playing both sides is having perfect information. You know what your own plans are. That's exactly what I was saying. Lancer saying, have you tried Conflict of Heroes solo? I've never even heard Conflict of Heroes, mate, to try it solo or otherwise. Clavax, I used to think solo war games were a bit silly having video games, but discovered them during the pandemic and found them very fun, much more of a zen thing. Yeah, I think a lot of people discovered them during the pandemic, mate. When you couldn't meet other people, I think people still wanted to play games, and that was a perfect time to kind of give them a try. Luke says, I want to like solo more than I do in reality. I do enjoy it, but I have to be in the right mood. And he plays Marvel Champions card game, and Rangers of Shadow Deep gives him a go as well. Let me try and skip ahead a bit here, because we're well behind the chat here. Paulie P, good evening. He says GMT games have a strong line in solo wargaming. check out Fields of Fire. Takes you through Normandy, Korea, and Vietnam. Nice one. Jermaine says core space as well. Yes. Jason is saying Dead Zone has AI mechanics. It does, mate. Yeah. Jan saying just moved and got a new job. Just started settling in. Space Station Zero's on the wish list. Nice one. Matt saying, yeah, Core Space needs way more love than I guess. It's a massively underrated game. For me, it's very much on the RPG spectrum, but like has so many bits from tabletop sort of wargaming that it just I think it ticks a lot of boxes. I think it's great. Let's just scroll down a bit more here. Say hello to a few more folks. Kevin Gallagher, good evening to you. How you doing? Bruce Games Ride says I just started playing 5 Parsecs and enjoying it. I have a few games ready to go solo as well. Cheers from Los Angeles. LA. I hope you're a Rams fan. You a Rams fan? Rams, Lakers? What's your team of choice? Down Under Blunder says D&D's been fun playing out history of the homebrew world. An adventuring group that runs alongside my friends who are the main story. That's what it's all about as well, isn't it? Excuse me. Matty is trying to make time with more than 1 or 2 people. It's like herding cats. Especially when it comes to RPG stuff. Maybe wargaming to find one person to play with might be a little bit more easy. Jim saying a video on the new Mantic Kings of War rules would be awesome. I think I might do it some point, mate. We're starting to get information coming out. So they did a blog today. We'll maybe have a look at it later on. There was a blog post from Mantic explaining a bit more about it. I think there's more to come tomorrow as well. So once we've got a bit more information, I'm finding out for the first time at the same time everybody else is finding out. So yeah, I don't have any kind of privileged information that I could kind of make a video ahead of time or anything like that. So yeah, I'm learning and finding out when you guys are as well. Let me skip ahead a little bit here. Where are we at to? Yeah, Christian saying he's with Tony as well. The social aspect of gaming's more enjoyable. Matt says he loves Aeronautica for putting minis together. Unlike a lot of GW minis, there hasn't been too many points where I spend 10 minutes trying to work out how to slot them together. As I mentioned before, I quite like that. I like that little puzzle aspect to it. It actually just keeps my brain engaged. Otherwise, I find it frustrating because I find it's something I have to concentrate on when I'm building models. So I can't really kind of watch something. Where when I'm sitting painting randomly, I can almost get into like a kind of like a bit of a zen state, and I can zone out, and I can almost watch something and paint something at the same time, and I find it quite relaxing. But I can't do that with building models randomly. Kevin says got your 2 t-shirts from your store. Thank you very much, mate. I'm not wearing one this evening, I'll be honest. I forgot to change into a BlackJack t-shirt tonight. Because I don't know if folks realise this, but what I do is when I'm working during the day, I wear one of my BlackJack t-shirts. So my headspace is kind of like, right, you're at work, you're working now. So when I kind of finished the tea time and I went to pick the little one up from school, t-shirt was off, jumped in the shower, got ready to go and pick him up from school, and then came back and put this on, and then I completely forgot to change back into one for tonight. But thank you very much. That was a long-winded way of saying thank you for supporting me and buying some t-shirts. Richard saying I hate multi-part figures if you can't do anything with them. I think what people might not really kind of realize about me is I'm not like an old school gamer. It's not something I did like when I was 10 and like remembering back to those old original Space Marines or anything like that. I got into tabletop gaming much later in my life, like more into my 30s and stuff. And so I don't have any of the nostalgia for like kind of like sort of multi-part kits and being able to pose them, and I just like to kind of get them built, get them and like get them to a stage where I can sit and paint them and relax and enjoy it, and then I really enjoy playing the games as well. I'm less concerned with having sort of individual poses of like I don't see them as individual poses when the difference is I can have the gun there or I can have the gun there. Like that to me just doesn't really interest me. John says I'm heavy and loose, not light and tight. We all have our cross to bear, mate, don't we? Where are we up to here? Yeah, Matt's saying that hobbies are meant to be satisfying and fun. Anyone telling you otherwise it needs a sock in the mouth. They do, mate, and that sock needs to be filled with billiard balls. Mark saying looking forward to the fantasy core space. Dragon Rabbit plays well solo due to kind of fog of war. I've not played Dragon Rabbit, mate. He says he's looking for a good, simple dungeon crawl type. Not quite found one I like. Maladam, I would say, mate, is going to be quite interesting. It's a bit of a dungeon crawl, but the setting for Maladam is quite interesting. So it's still set like way in the future at the same time as Core Space. So it's futuristic fantasy, if you like, in terms of like things that were considered as like sort of cutting edge science fiction and stuff have almost basically kind of melted down into magical powers and stuff. So it's an era where there are sort of wizards with special powers and stuff, and like laser guns have gone and that kind of thing. But there are weapons, there are swords, there are axes, there are guns. But it's very much more fantasy-esque, but in a futuristic fantasy. It's quite interesting, actually. What was that? Oh, it's just Facebook giving me notifications saying people want to join the group. I will do that. I'm the only moderator for the Facebook group, so I'll do all that after the stream. Mike's Summer saying zombie mode in Dead Zone is cool. It is cool, mate, yeah. Christian there just sharing the link as well for the t-shirts if anybody is interested. Ed saying I'm an old school player and I have no time for multi-part models that have a variety of near identical. That's exactly what I was saying, mate. Yeah, and identical poses give me modern dynamic posing. Yeah, I'm with you on that one, mate. Anna Robinson, good evening, Hannah. How are you doing? And Kev Gallagher there saying, how about Kings of War historical during an Arabs and Crusader armies? I'm not that much into historical stuff, to be fair, and I've never really kind of gotten into the Kings of War historical stuff. I know it was important to a lot of people, but it wasn't something I really played myself. Anyway, let's get to the main point for this evening. So as you all know, this gets clipped out and gets used for our clips video. So what I'll be doing, I've got all my notes here, get my notes in front of me. So yeah, just kind of chat amongst yourselves in the chat while I'm kind of delivering this one. If there's anything you specifically want me to kind of respond to, if you type at BlackJack Legacy first, and then it'll highlight it on my screen and I'll get to see it and stuff. But tonight, I want to talk about solo wargaming, and is it something that you and I should be doing more of? What's the good points about solo wargaming? What's the bad points? But I'll tell you what I think, and then you can make up your own mind. But let me know down in the comments whether solo wargaming, you think is something for you, or is it something that you kind of you do as a bit of a last resort when there's no other option. So from a positive point of view, solo wargaming, I think that what solo wargaming does is it removes the biggest barrier within wargaming itself, which is finding someone to play with. Let's be honest, we all want to play more games, I think. I mean, the majority of people who enjoy the gaming side, we all want to play more games, and normally the barrier is getting somebody else to play against, be that there's nobody that wants to play the game that you want to play. You don't want to play the game that somebody else is playing. You can't get your schedules lined up, so your gaming group meets on a Thursday night, but you kind of, I don't know, you have like family commitments. You take the kids to like some sports practice on a Thursday night or something. There's always reasons why it's difficult to kind of, around family life especially, to try and find time to play with other folks. So I think what playing solo games does is it really does kind of take down the biggest barrier we all have about finding an opponent. Another positive is playing solo games allows you to understand how a game plays, and then allows you to be able to kind of understand it to teach to somebody else. So when we're talking about solo games, just to clarify, we are talking about games that are designed to be played single player. And a lot of games that are designed to be played single player can be played cooperative. So like basically, if you can play it solo, you could split those minis in half if you like, and your friend could play the other half, and you can play against the game. And some of those solo games are also designed to be player versus player, as well as play solo and co-op. So being able to play a game solo means you can sit at home in your own time, learn the rules, find out how it plays, understand it a bit more, and then be able to teach it to somebody else. It's not always the easiest thing to be able to teach yourself to play a game that needs two players to be able to play it. So I think solo games definitely have that going for them as well. Touching on something I've just mentioned there as well, another positive is if a game can be played solo, it can be played co-op, which for a lot of players is a really, really good way to play the games. My wife, not really a fan of player versus player kind of games, be that miniatures games or be that board games. A lot of the stuff that we play where we can kind of play alongside each other against the game. My wife's not somebody that wants to sit and read through rule books and learn all of the rules and learn tactics. She knows that I play a lot more often than she does, so there's always going to be a bit of a tactical imbalance in the fact that I'm just more aware of how the game plays versus how she does. And so what we found over time is that playing cooperative games works much better for us as kind of as a couple of players, if you like. So any game that you can play solo, like I say, you can just kind of, if there's 10 models in a warband or something like that, you can split them up and say, yeah, you take 5 and control them, I'll take these 5 and control them, and we'll play together and try and kind of beat the game that way. So that's another plus point for solo war games. Another positive for solo war games is they let you play the games that you want to play, not just to play the games that other people play in order to get an opponent. So I've talked about this on live streams before, about like what you can do to try and get players to play the games that you want. One thing that always crops up when I talk about sort of playing slightly less popular games, shall we say, is, oh, it's always hard to find an opponent. I'd rather just play 40k. It's not really the game I enjoy, but I know I'll always be able to get a game of it. If you're playing solo games, that doesn't have to be a consideration. You really can play the games that you really want to play. So that's a real positive as well when it comes to solo games. Another positive, that solo games are really, really good for those miniature agnostic games. So if you have lots of minis that you already use, or you like for other games and bits and pieces, you can take them and play them in your solo miniature agnostic games, and you don't have to worry about constantly kind of going to your opponent. Oh, well, this model I've got here, this Space Marine with this weapon represents sort of such and such on the board, and this wizard here it isn't a wizard. It's like it's a bit of a ranger, and it represents this one. You don't have any of that to clarify to your opponent all the time. You know exactly what everything is yourself. You're playing the game alone. You don't have to worry about them kind of stuff. So you're playing those maybe slightly more kind of obscure miniature agnostic games. It's another plus point when it comes to the solo side. Another positive is that they are perfect for house ruling rules to the games where maybe you don't necessarily like the way something plays, or maybe the theme of the game doesn't really fit with what you want. So you can take the basic core engine of that game and twist it to something else. Games like Rangers of Shadow Deep, for example, has a really good core system that I've seen people like use that as a framework to be able to play a game of Star Wars, basically replacing all of the different types of characters with kind of Star Wars characters, for example. And again, of course you could do this if you're playing kind of player versus player games, but it's something you then have to agree all of those rules with your opponent. You need to clarify what everything is. Like, I know it says this in the rules, but what I mean is this is what it is. If you're playing that solo, you don't have to worry about any of that kind of stuff. You're just playing the game the way that you want to play it. Another positive, solo games generally have more of a narrative experience to them rather than relying upon that kind of competitive player versus player element. So in my experience, because solo games, you're playing against an AI, for example, there's a very much more narrative storytelling reason to it. Like, you're not really playing a solo game in order to win. You're playing a solo game in order to play a game. And what tends to happen is those rules, those books that have these solo games tend to kind of like sort of really embellish and kind of sort of give you a real story about why this game is happening, why this event is happening, why you have to complete this mission, why you have to do this scenario, that kind of thing. So I tend to find if you're more into the scenario, the story-driven stuff, that definitely comes through, in general, a lot stronger in some solo games. The last positive point I want to say about solo games is that you kind of get value out of your purchase, as there's nothing really stopping you playing the game. Like, we all buy these 2-player starter sets. We all buy these box sets with our intentions of, we're going to play loads of games. I'm going to get it all built. I'm going to get it painted. I'm going to play loads of games. And you might well get them built. You might even get them painted. But I would say that 9 times out of 10, you play a lot less games than you probably envisioned that you would be playing. When it comes to solo games, again, that barrier isn't really there, so you tend to get a little bit more value for money out of those solo experiences by being able to play it whenever you want. One more positive experience as well I forgot about is that actually solo games are great to play with kids as well. So as I mentioned before, a lot of solo games can all be played from a cooperative standpoint, and that's perfect for basically if you've got younger players who see you playing and they want to get involved. Like if you're playing a player versus player game, you've got to teach that kind of the little one the rules. You have to teach them enough that basically at least they feel like they're in control of something. Where if you're playing like a co-op game, like if you're playing a solo game and splitting it down between the two of you, you're helping each other. Like there's not this case of like sort of, you know, I'm going to destroy your army kind of thing. Like you might be 6, but I'm still going to beat you kind of thing. You can play it together. The little one feels like they're involved. They're rolling the dice. They're moving the miniatures, but you're basically coaching them through it and you're helping them play. So it's great for playing with like families and younger kids and stuff. Now, all of that said, I've just kind of made it sound like sort of solo games are the kind of, you know, they're the best thing since sliced bread and everybody should be playing solo games. There is one big negative that for me personally actually kind of trumps all those positives. And that one big negative is it's a very isolating experience playing solo games. What I do for a job, yeah, I'm here. I'm on my own. I love to sit and paint. My hobby is sitting on my own, painting miniatures. I don't like go out to work and kind of surround myself with people every day. So for me personally, gaming is the thing that gets me out of the house. It gets me interacting socially, and I really enjoy the social experience of playing games. That just disappears if you just play solo games. Now, it might be very different for you. Like you might have a really busy job where you work in a factory and there's lots of noise, or you work in a shop and you're constantly surrounded by people. And when you get home, you might just want to switch off and lock the world away and play a solo game. If that's the case, definitely check out some solo games. There are so many good ones out there. But for me personally, the last thing that I need is to play games on my own as well. Like that almost basically is the point where I might as well get rid of the front door lock because I never leave the house at that point kind of thing. For me, the social side of gaming is the reason I got into playing games. I got into the tabletop hobby by sitting painting miniatures and sitting at home and enjoying the kind of the relaxing pursuit of just kind of painting, and it was very zen and it was very calming. But when I played the first games, the traveling to tournaments with friends, the night times of going for a few beers and some nice food and chatting about tabletop games, the going to the club on a Wednesday or a Thursday night or a Sunday afternoon, meeting up with people, seeing what other people have been painting, seeing what other games people are playing, getting demo games of other games, getting involved in that whole social experience. That for me is what the hobby is all about, for me personally. And again, I am talking from a personal experience. So this is the reason why actually solo games are not for me. Because the most important part of this hobby for me is the social experience and the mixing with people and the kind of that involve myself in communities. That might not be the case for you. So let me know down in the comments, what do you think? Do you think, have you always written off solo games and thought, that's the last thing I need is to be playing games kind of on my own kind of thing? Or is it something that you've tried and you absolutely love it to the point now where you don't even go looking for like opponents to play anymore? Is it something that it's a last resort for you and you only do it when you really can't get a game? Let me know in the comments. I'm really interested to see kind of how folks think about solo games. Thanks for watching. So folks, let me get back to the chat here and see what folks have been saying. Because, for me personally, I'll be completely honest, solo games are not really for me. I've tried them, and whilst I enjoy playing the game, the chat, the social experience, I even feel myself, if I've played a solo game, I feel myself sitting here, like talking through the game rather than like actually physically talking out loud as if I'm talking to an opponent, and I find myself missing that person sitting at the other side of the table to play against. So they're really not they're really not for me. And as much as I want to love them, I'd rather play a solo game as a cooperative experience than I would as a solo experience. Let me jump in here and see what folks are saying. Ryan says, thanks mate, I did the trick. Aiden's in bed now, but you made him smile and laugh. That'll do it, mate. I'd put a smile on his face, that's worth it. Mark, I'm really sorry to read that, mate. We'll have to have a chat, mate, because it's not something I'd heard of, and I'm really sorry that it's causing you some grief on that, mate. Tony saying, I can't even watch a stream of an RPG, I get so stressed. Deep Red, good evening. He said, I recently got a copy of War of the Worlds solo game. I've seen some good reviews, haven't got it to the table yet. Lee Burns, good evening, mate. He said he's interested in giving Space Station Zero a shot in solo mode. I think there was a few people have been chatting about it, mate. It's not something I've managed to play yet, but it's certainly something folks have been chatting about. Oh, my throat is so dry. Excuse me. Oh, I could feel it drying out while I was kind of chatting away there. James is saying, I'm relatively new to wargaming and got into it through playing 5 parsecs from home over lockdown. It was quite easy to get into as a newcomer. I think it's definitely a thing where if you get into solo wargaming, it's not like a kind of an either or thing. It's not like, well, I only play solo war games, that means I can't play other games kind of thing. I think the vast majority of people probably either play solo war games through necessity, the fact that they're not near anybody else that plays, or they're not near a local store, or not near a local club, or they just do it because that's the way their kind of time allows them to do it. But I think generally most folks would like to play with other people as well. I'm saying generally because I know that's not the case all the time. Richard saying, I still play solo 40k, but once that's done, my hobby is over. Oh, I'm sorry about that, mate. Sorry about that. Utini saying, time to fetch the minion from school. I'll catch the rest of this later. Thank you very much for tuning in, mate. Hexy Beast is saying, I'm always in double figures before reviews. It means my content is usually later than others, but I kind of feel the same as you. It's a weird thing, mate, isn't it? There's always that push to, like, whoever's first gets the most views. However, I feel whoever's first, unless they've had really, really early access, which generally that's not the case, then the review is a little bit tainted in terms of the fact that, well, they haven't played it enough to really review something. It's like getting a video game, playing it for 10 minutes and going, oh yeah, I've just got this game, it's really good, the graphics are fantastic, and go, yeah, well, but what's the gameplay like? Well, I haven't really played it long enough to like, there's a lot of that as well, unfortunately. Where are we up to? Shane saying, I love your coverage of smaller games, trying to work out how to solo Moonstone so I can learn the game and then teach my group. Do you know what it is? Moonstone is a fantastic game. It's probably one of the hardest ones to be able to do it solo because of the whole way the card mechanic works, where there's a bit of a bluffing game where you're trying to say, you know, I've got this many red or whatever it is, and you're trying to say, I don't believe you kind of thing. And then when you come to the combat, there's that kind of playing the card with different types of kind of sword maneuvers. So I think it's probably one of the hardest games to be able to play solo. Have a look online. Somebody might have worked something out. There might be an app or something like that out there, but I think it's pretty nigh on impossible to be able to play that solo. Yeah, Hexy Beast saying, yeah, best thing about playing solo is it doesn't matter if others like the game, just like I was saying, mate. Yeah. I think I might have gone a bit too far back there a little bit as well. Let's have a little look. We're talking about bacon sandwiches again now. Michael Cowan, hello Michael, how you doing, buddy? He says, going to catch us on the replay. Interested in this topic as my wife's not 100% sold on wargaming for now. To be honest, mate, my wife's not a massive fan of wargaming, really. She does like board games. We play a lot of like sort of board games together, but wargaming's not really her bag. However, if there's something we can play cooperatively and we can play it together rather than against each other, because the problem is when you're playing a war game, it either becomes a teaching game, so neither of you is really getting the full enjoyment from it, or the other person needs to learn the game to be able to play it. So it's a bit of a different experience if you're not really into tabletop games. Tom Kennish, hello. He says, mini-agnostic solo playing hobbying means I'm creating my own version of a fantasy world inspired by the rules rather than following someone else's law. Just as I mentioned, mate, exactly. Tabletop Ramble, good evening to you. Mini Warmut, hello. He's saying solo wargaming is his jam. He enjoys creating the characters and the backgrounds, and then he busts out a campaign and watches the story unfold. 100%, mate, yeah. Bruce, good evening to you as well, mate. He said he missed the early talk. Solo's cool, and he's played Necromunda solo as well. Spy Lord saying HP sauce for the win, but they need to change their logo now. You're right, mate. Double dip here, like vinegar on bacon. I don't actually like vinegar, mate, if I'm honest. I have this, now we're talking about it, I have to mention it, because I have this weird condition, and I have no idea why I have this condition, but the mere thought or the smell of vinegar makes me start to sweat. I can feel my face going red now just talking about it, and I don't know what it is. I've never been able to find at the bottom of it, but I can smell it a mile off. But so I can, like, as whilst I might like the taste of it, I can't put it on my food, and I hate being around anybody when they've got vinegar on their food. So yeah, honestly, you can see on the camera now, my face is going scarlet. I'm getting really hot. It's just, I don't know why. I vinegar sweats. I don't know why it is. Dave saying Mansions of Madness is great solo and co-op as well. It has an app that guides you through. There's a lot of Fantasy Flight games like that. The Star Wars Imperial Assault has an app like that as well. I think their new version of Descent has that as well. Some really good stuff. Let's have a little. Johan saying he has 5 Parsecs book. Hasn't actually played it yet, but seems an amazing fit for the Blackstone Fortress set of minis. Yeah, I can imagine there's some crossover in that kind of thing. Let's have a little look here. I'm going to pick out some of the ones where folks have highlighted because there's so much chat to get through. Hexy Beast is saying, interestingly enough, I got into the hobby as a solo gamer. Never had the social side until recently. I think that's the case, mate. I think some people it doesn't bother them. Like they get their social experiences elsewhere. They might be like members of clubs. They might have other hobbies. When I say about clubs, like they might go fishing with friends. They might play in a football team or something. They might be in sports clubs, and maybe the social experience from this kind of part of their hobby might not be important. For me, I don't have any of that. This is a big part of my, like, I think without playing games against folks, like I don't really have much of a social life. That sounds terrible, but it's true. So for me, the social side of things is massively important. Shane saying there, I think solo gaming kind of scratched the itch when work and life gets in the way of a regular group meet. I think so, mate, and I think it's something I hear a lot from folks who, especially folks who do RPGs and try to get a big group of people together on a regular basis. I think sometimes there are games a little bit like Frostgrave, a little bit like Core Space, that can slot in really nicely when the whole group can't get together. Maybe sort of a couple of them might sort of co-op something like that, and maybe have a little mini campaign like that have an RPG feel about them, but don't rely on there being a massive group. Like if only one person can play this week, maybe they want to play a bit of Core Space on their own. If only 2 people can play this week, maybe they'll kind of play a little bit of Core Space together, and the other person will drop out the next time, and somebody else will come in and take over or something. So I think solo games, co-op games, are perfect for them kind of groups where they can't always meet on a regular basis. Alex says, I guess I lucked out because my wife is also a gamer, so I have the best of both worlds. The only downside is double the cost since we each need a force for a war game. I think it works both ways, mate. I think it's healthy for couples to have separate interests as well, because if you spend all your time together and all of your spare time together, it can become quite intense as well. So it's nice to have different interests, but in the same breath, it's also nice when you have like interests that you can share together as well. So yeah, it works for some, it doesn't work for others. VG says, nothing wrong with talking to yourself, often the best conversation I get. I never have an argument when I talk to myself, put it that way, mate. But I do find, like, even when I'm teaching myself how to play games, I'll be saying, right, okay, so this one's moving 5 inches, and okay, that's in range of that one, and I'm just checking. So this one can, and because I'm very much an audible learner, and I've learned this from if I'm reading rules, they don't sink in nearly as well as if I hear the rules kind of coming back to me. So if somebody's teaching me a game, I pick it up straight away. I learn it really fast. If somebody kind of demos a game to me, yep, yeah, I understand what you mean, absolutely fine, I completely get that. If I'm reading the rule book, I have to physically play it out. I have to move models, I have to roll dice, I have to measure things to understand a lot of how that works. So I find by speaking out loud and hearing myself, kind of hearing the words coming back, that's how I learn the best. I've learned over the years. I'm 46 years old. I know that I learn best when I hear things as opposed to physically reading them. It's one of the reasons why I much more enjoy listening to audio books rather than reading books. Although I did read a book on holiday and it was quite relaxing, to be fair. So yeah, that's why I talk to myself when I do that kind of stuff. James is saying, I think my main reason for gaming is to show off models I've painted, so it kind of defeats the purpose of solo game. I agree, mate. As I said in the kind of the main chat part, the social aspect of like, oh, like what you've been painting, what have you painted since we last played? Let's have a look at those models. Oh, I've never seen them before, kind of thing. What you painting next? Do you fancy an army for this game? Like that kind of social aspect and kind of being able to like compliment each other in the work that we're putting in and kind of encourage and support and sort of like, you know, sort of give your friends encouragement for what they're doing. It's a big part of it for me. Big Dave says, I may have missed it. Where do we send the painting challenge pictures? You send them to me at blackjacklegacy@gmail.com. They'll all come to me, mate. Clyde Dashin says they're okay as prep to playing co-op or against other folks. Yeah, it's certainly one reason why, mate. Tabletop Rumble says, I never really tried much solo gaming until COVID lockdowns. It became a godsend. I'll be honest, I didn't really play a lot of solo gaming during the lockdowns. I really struggled with not seeing people. It was a massive, it was a weird time for me personally, because I went from doing my old job and seeing lots of people to doing this new job right as lockdown happened and seeing no one. And it was a really hard transition. And even now, a couple of years down the line, I'm still struggling, I think, to transition into what does working on my own mean, like in terms of kind of like branching out and making sure I've got a social circle, I've got a like a network around me when it comes to work. I think I'm still kind of struggling with that a bit. Mark said, anytime, definitely, mate. We'll definitely have a chat. John said, I thought 1 week I wouldn't agree with you and you'd pull it out of the bag at the end. It's that social side at the club with a mate I enjoy, but totally for some having a peaceful time on your own. That's it. I knew today when you were saying in the Patreon chat about this will be the first time I don't agree with you. I think at that point I already knew that we probably felt very similar about it. And just because I think there are so many really good points to solo wargaming, for me personally, I think it would kind of kill my enjoyment of the hobby. I get a lot of enjoyment from doing this and chatting to people and being part of a wider community. I really enjoy getting myself to events and tournaments and sitting playing games against people. The more people, the better. It doesn't need to be a regular opponent. I love meeting new people and kind of playing games and rolling dice together and sharing something that we're both like passionate about. I love trying new games. The big part of it for me is the social side, and without that, I think I'd probably drift away from this hobby without the social side. And it's something I need to get better at. I'm not very good at that. Like I said, I'm still kind of finding my feet coming out of lockdowns and all that kind of stuff and transitioning from one job into another. I've still never really found my groove with kind of getting out and playing more games, as many as I would like to. But yeah, it's definitely it's one of the strongest parts for me. I love that community aspect. Brian saying Rangers of Shadow Deep's the gold standard for solo gaming. I've heard that a lot, to be fair, mate. James says he's going to the local club for the first time this week, despite only playing solo before. Wish me luck. Best of luck, mate. I hope you enjoy it, mate. Let us know next week how we got on. Chizzy Kennedy, hello. He said, I've enjoyed a few games of Curse City solo. Had no choice, as no one else had a copy when it first came out. Yeah, I've only played Curse City solo, and to be fair, I didn't enjoy the game. I'm assuming it'll be better playing with other people, but then I guess that's because I'm playing with other people, not because the game suddenly, like, it's not like loads of rules changes and it suddenly gets a better game. I think it just ends up being the social aspect of having fun with other people almost trumps the fact that the rules are not fantastic. Yeah, John saying own is ideal. It's different things that suit us all. Yeah, absolutely, mate. Wayne saying, I love the social side of gaming, but playing solo gives me more opportunities and an even more relaxed experience. Yeah, and I completely get that. As I said before, however you enjoy your hobby, is you're doing it right if you're enjoying it. For me, if I have time on my own, I think from a hobby perspective, I think I'd rather paint some of my minis. I'd rather do a little bit of model building, paint some minis, maybe catch up on some podcasts, that kind of stuff, rather than maybe devote 2 or 3 hours into actually playing a game. That's my own kind of personal thing. But I get other people find it a very relaxed experience to be able to kind of move models around and stuff. I mean, I sometimes get enjoyment from like setting the game up in order to play it. Like if somebody's coming to play a game, like when John's been over and we've had a game of Firefight or something, actually setting the table up and getting all the buildings put out and like putting my models in it and like even just taking some cool pictures, I get enjoyment from that. So I totally get why folks enjoy playing solo. Greetings ER910, nice to see you. Tony says, what's that? He says, I work hard to be around and it does take it out of me, so I have to keep to safe places like here, but I do try to maintain some kind of social interaction. I'm glad, mate. I mean, I think everybody deserves some social interaction. It doesn't matter how comfortable you feel being around people. I think I would always encourage people to never isolate themselves. If you isolate yourself, any problem you get feels 10 times bigger because you don't have anybody to share it with. So I would always encourage people to kind of like to interact with others, be that virtually through messages or through forums or through Discord groups or Facebook groups or whatever it is, but never isolate yourself completely. I get there's a lot of people I don't want to spend time with as well. Like out there are some dicks out there in the world and I don't want to spend time with them either. But there's a lot of nice folks out there as well, and it's good not to kind of become too much of a hermit. Mark saying, I have games I always play with others and games I only play solo. The former is for the social, while the second is more hobby focused. Interesting. Luke says, sometimes playing the games through solo to learn the flow of play and develop familiarity can be good, but I don't consider that the same thing. No, I would agree, mate. I think it's learning to play the game. I think is. I think if you're playing solo to learn the game because you want to be able to teach somebody else, I don't really see that as playing the game solo either. But it's something. If a game can be played solo, it's certainly easier to learn it in that respect. Busey says maybe you could even call painting and building the minis solo wargaming. It's certainly solo hobbying, isn't it? It's like, I think, like the term the hobby has almost been kind of like sort of trademarked by Games Workshop these days. But when I talk about the hobby, I'm talking about the entire like sort of the whole spectrum of what we do. Like that might be kit bashing, it might be collecting, it might be just reading on like, you know, like looking and research and kind of what things are coming out, learning a bit about it. You might enjoy being around on the different Facebook groups or sort of different social media aspects. You know, you might be one of those folks that are really into kind of sharing your pictures with people online, and that's all you ever do. The building, the painting, the kit bashing, the gaming, the collecting, the displaying of stuff, the photography. I see that as the whole, like the whole part of the hobby, for example. And we all like different aspects of it. Like we're never all going to kind of all like the exact same thing. But I feel that it's too niche of a kind of group of people. Like there's not enough of us to just say, right, well, you painters, you stay over there, you do your painting and you enjoy that, and you folks who only like playing at tournaments, right, you play over there, and you folks that only play at home and don't go to any clubs and anything like that, and you only play with 1 or 2 people, right, well, you go and sit over there. Like our hobby isn't big enough to kind of separate out into little into fractions or fracture into factions, maybe that would be. So I kind of consider the hobby to be the overarching kind of catch-all term for everything, really. Chesney saying, another downside of playing games solo, you can by mistake end up playing the rules wrong and get caught out when playing in person. it's an interesting point, because when I first started playing, like, the internet and social media wasn't the same as it is now. We had online forums where people would go in and kind of chat about games and stuff. Facebook wasn't really a thing, I seem to remember. It might have been, but it wasn't something I really used. YouTube certainly wasn't at the level that it is now in terms of like battle reports and all that kind of stuff. So generally what happened was, you would learn to play a game with a group of people, and you would all play the game under what you all considered were the rules. And things like meta and all this kind of stuff only really cropped up when people went away to tournaments and stuff, and played against people who would also learn to play the game in their own little group, and maybe disagreed with, well, that's not how that rule works. It works like this. And they were like, oh, but we play it like this. So I think that used to happen quite a lot. These days, there's so many battle reports, there's so many YouTube channels talking about stuff, there's so many sort of visual ways, there's people like meta gaming, like online, talking about tournament results, talking about list building. There's so much of it now that I think we all kind of generally end up in a bit more of a in a level playing field when it comes to rules. But you're right, playing on your own is kind of like you could end up playing the rules wrong. The difference is, if you only ever play on your own, it doesn't really matter, as long as you kind of as long as you enjoy it. Where are we up to? James is saying sweaty head incoming. I think I managed to pass it off, but now we're talking about it again, it might come back. Spiderlord says, I've not played a game in over 2 years, despite living in Nottingham. Are you the only person in Nottingham who hasn't played a game? I don't make new friends easily, so solo might have to be a thing. I'll be honest with you, I don't either, really. It's a conversation I've had with my wife quite a bit, because my wife is a real kind of like, she's a real social animal. She's still got friends who she went to nursery school with. So she's got like groups of friends who she's got a friend who she like met when she went to nursery. They were still like best friends now. She's got friends that she met when she was at school, and she'll spend time with them. She's got old work friends. She'll like make friends with other school mothers and like go for a glass of wine with them kind of thing, and meet them at like kids' parties and stuff. She's very close with her sisters, and like there's friends of sisters and stuff like that. She's a real social animal. And whilst I wouldn't consider myself to be like an introvert, I like to go out and enjoy myself, and I like to be around people, I don't really do anything to put me in a situation where I kind of make new friends, if you like. So it's and the older you get, the harder it gets as well. So yeah, I don't think you're alone in that, mate, to be fair. Sometimes we need to just do stuff to push us out of our comfort zone. Camo was saying, anybody use the solo books by Mike Lambo? I'm not familiar with them, mate, but somebody in the chat might be. Drogwin saying, a little off topic, but is there any game in fantasy with rules like Dead Zone? I'd like such a game. Solo would be cool, because I can't get my group together very often. Life, baby, and work and stuff. You know what, mate? I don't think there is a fantasy version of anything like that. I'm surprised Mantic haven't taken a look at it. I know Vanguard did very well when it first came out. It seems to be something that doesn't really get a lot of love and attention these days. I'd love to see a fantasy version of Dead Zone. Like, even if it was just a case of like porting over the rules and changing them to a fantasy sort of setting, I'd love to see that. Peter Koeman, hello mate. He's saying he's been at the hobby for a bit, family issues, but loves his solo gaming. Aliens, a board game, D&D adventure game, Star Saga, you name it. Alex says, how much vinegar are you consuming to get vinegar sweats? This is the thing, Alex, right? I don't need to consume any vinegar. I just need to think about it. It's psychological. I don't know why it is. My dad has exactly the same thing as well. So there's obviously some kind of like medical thing. But basically, I've only got to think about it. I've only got to smell it. I've only got to see a bottle of it on a table somewhere. And that is enough to kind of like sort of trigger me. Honestly, I can feel the beads of sweat coming through on the top of my head now just talking about it. So let's get off the subject. Busey says some people have a condition where they can't sweat. There was someone on the news recently that had it. I can't remember who it was. Honestly, the name escapes me, mate. The name escapes me. Thank you very much. Hexy Beaks is saying he's got to shoot. Thank you very much, mate. Jess is saying fighting fantasy books are awesome solo gaming. That is another way to do it as well, mate. Fighting fantasy as well. Busey saying, when's the next Fighting Fantasy live stream? I'll be honest, mate, I've never even kind of given it a thought. I'd almost forgotten about it. It's one of those things like since I did that to about Warhammer's killing my channel kind of thing, the live streams have been a bit more popular and the numbers have gone up again kind of thing, and we seem to be getting a good gang. The problem with the Fighting Fantasy ones is they kill all that off. People go, I'm not sitting listening to them, I'm reading a book kind of thing, but they are fun. So yeah, we need to bring one back. I promise I'll do one in the next month or so. We'll definitely. I've even got a feeling there might be some new Fighting Fantasy books on the digital system for us to use. So let me look into it. VJ says, biggest problem for solo gaming is when you get a bad roll or draw, knowing how much it's going to screw things up and resisting the urge to re-roll and draw. That's a very good point, and it also builds upon the Fighting Fantasy books as well. How many times do you kind of read the page and go, nah, we'll go back and we'll do it the other way. The other side of it is it doesn't really matter, does it, if you re-roll it, because you're trying to have a fun experience. There's no point punishing yourself. Like, the idea is not really to win, it's just to have a bit of fun. Like, it's not like you can say, oh, like this solo game, like I'm on 3 losses now. It's like, that's not really the point of it, is it? Tony says, as I say, solo should be a lifeline for me, but it lacks the one thing that terrifies me: social interaction. I'm a social person with a social anxiety disorder. Do you know what it is, mate? I think that's almost kind of like probably the worst, isn't it? Like, if you didn't really like people, you'd probably find like life would be a lot easier. I think you're doing fine the way you are, mate. You find a way through it all that works for you. And to hell with anybody else. I think you've got to look after number one first and foremost with this one. Tom Kenny says, I played a co-op round of 5 parsecs with my other half. After 10 minutes she was gripped. Every dice roll was full on life or death drama. The narrative coming out of the random is hard to resist. This is where random, when it comes to games, is really important. I know people like things to be really, really finely tuned and really, really finely balanced. I quite like a bit of random in my games. It's those random moments that give you them cinematic experiences, that give you those moments that you talk about, like when the game's finished, the bits that you remember. That comes from the randomness in the game, I would say. He's saying she's not a gamer. It was lovely to see. We've been a bit like that, like me and my wife, when we've done things like we quite like doing like sort of escape room type stuff. So we've done a lot of the exit games and stuff like that. And there's been those moments in them as well. I mean, not necessarily randomness, but those ones where we're working together to try and solve a puzzle, and that moment where like it clicks for her, and you see the light bulb come on, and you go, oh, what about if we do like, and like to see that like that moment of like, like I've got it kind of thing. Like I love to see that. I love those experiences. Dave says, I always look grumpy when playing games. My back is a pain at the best of times. Think I said hello at the Mantic Armada tournament we both attended. I remember, Dave. Yeah, to be honest, mate, it's funny because like obviously I meet a few people kind of thing when I'm out at different games and stuff like that and different events and things. And there are some people who like I really have to go like because they see me on screen, they instantly kind of go, oh, it's Andy kind of thing. But I'm not always familiar with other people unless they kind of introduce themselves. But I do remember meeting you, Dave. And he says, he never got head-to-head as my orcs got sunk a lot. And I think as fractions go, I'm about 1.5 after lockdown. Yeah. Andy Smith says hello after he said that for his last night shift. VJ says, you're only playing the game wrong if you aren't having fun. Exactly, mate. John says, I really enjoy the solo aspect of painting. That part is chilling at home, but playing games is gloriously unimportant. Does it matter if my orcs die? No, it's the stories they tell. That's kind of where I am, mate. Like, I love going to events and I love playing in tournaments, but I do that to play more games and to meet more people. Like, I won the God tier event, but I'm not. I think like. I'm not like somebody that really ever goes to challenge for top table kind of thing. I like to win games because that's just like me, is saying, well, I understand what I'm doing and I'm kind of playing well kind of thing. But it's not important to win. Like it's the social experience. Painting in a group or painting with somebody else is something I'd quite like to do. I've only ever done it once with my friend Jason, and he came to our house and we kind of just sat and painted. I think we were going to a Walking Dead event and we needed to get some stuff done, so we kind of sat together and painted as a bit of motivation, and I quite enjoyed that, and it's something I would potentially like to do more often. Yeah, painting is easy to do when you're on your own, isn't it? Let's have a little look here. Wolf Trem says, is Rangers of Shadow Deep worth a shot if one enjoyed 5 leagues from the Borderlands? Absolutely, mate. People speak really, really highly of Rangers of Shadow Deep. I do have the rules. Joseph McCulloch sent me the rules himself, and I've read through them, and they sound really good. If you're into your RPG style tabletop games, absolutely 100% up your street. I've just never had a chance to play it yet, and that sounds silly bearing in mind it's a solo game, but as I mentioned before, like, solo stuff really isn't my bag so much, purely because like the social side of it is what gets me going. Let's have a little look. James G says Rangers of Shadow Deep's a great game. Bruce is saying, not sure if it's like Dead Zone, but Corvus Belly is coming out with Warcrow. Maybe that will be more like Infinity. I'm assuming it'll be more like Infinity, mate, to be fair. Dave says, the pickled onions have the same effect. They do, mate. It's just the thought. Salt and vinegar crisps, they do it as well. Like, oh god, honestly, I can feel my face burning just talking about it. Like salt and vinegar crisps, walking past a fish and chip shop, sometimes even like places like, even like McDonald's, when they kind of sort of, there's like a vinegary smell in the air and stuff like that. Honestly, you can see my face going scarlet. Honestly, I don't know what it is, but this has happened since I was a kid. It's not something that's kind of like sort of come on recently, but yeah, it's literally, it's just the thought of it. I don't even need to kind of say the word out loud. I don't need to see it. I don't need to smell it. I've just got to think about it. But like my son loves like vinegar on his chips and stuff like that, and he loves salt and vinegar crisps. And as soon as they open a bag, the smell is just like, whoa, honestly. You can see it starting to come through. It's terrible. Yeah, John saying Fantasy Dead Zone will be amazing. Clavac says, do you have a favourite shop in the area? I might visit Newcastle soon. There's not a lot of great shops, mate, if I'm being perfectly honest. In the city centre, there really isn't a good kind of tabletop shop. There's a Warhammer shop in town. There is a Travelling Man, which has like sort of mainly board gaming, not a lot of miniature gaming. There is a Forbidden Planet, mainly comics and kind of like nerd type stuff, with some board games, not really any tabletop stuff at all. The tabletop games, I'm trying to think where it's probably as good as anywhere. I don't really think there is anywhere in Newcastle, mate, if I'm being perfectly honest. We're not very well served when it comes to miniature gaming stores. Jez says, I'm back up in a month, and I plan on taking a few weeks off, so I'll zap you when I'm back and we can have a game or something. 100%, mate. Definitely, please do. Tony says, you're right, the hobby applies to loads of us. I know that I'm hobby these days, but I can help or inspire, and it makes my day when I see our members push the boat out. Yeah, even just encouraging other people and getting enjoyment from that, mate, is definitely part of the hobby as well. Mark saying, it was quite nice this week at the club. A chap came just to paint. There's a club open not far from me, I was mentioning before. I think it's called West Allotment Wildlings, and I think folks just go there to paint, to be fair. I saw some pictures on Facebook where folks just take their paints and a few models, and they kind of sit around a table and sit and paint in the corner type of thing. Vichi's got an Amazon splurge on the way. Nice one. Andros, hello to you. He says, I love a lot of exit games, the moments where you have to think outside the box. Yeah, definitely, mate. Phil saying, your next escape room and live stream, Andy versus the Vinegar Factory. The thought of it is just making me sweat, mate. Mark says, Lambo Books was nice dice game. Didn't really feel like a war game or skirmish game to me, just tokens called Warriors and Knights. Never heard of it, mate. Andros says he never played a solo game. Nothing against them, but I feel like I get my solo thrills from the hobby side of building, kit bashing and painting, and all power to those who solo game though. Yeah, Tony saying definitely psychosemantic. It's kind of weird though, mate, because it's not something that's like, honestly, it's not something that I wasn't like thrown in a bath of vinegar when I was a kid kind of thing. My dad has exactly the same thing as well. So it's weird that that I've got it as well. But I definitely think it's psychological. But I don't know why it triggers. It's weird. Yeah, Dave saying we know your kryptonite now. Yeah, absolutely. I'll try to avoid mentioning it. I know for a fact everybody mentions it. My best man even mentioned it in his wedding speech as well. So it's one of those things. Everybody knows about it. I'm not kind of shy away from it, but I do kind of like. And having a shaved head as well. What happens is everybody sees the little beads of sweat start to form on your head. Normally, if you had a full head of hair, it kind of covers it over and nobody really notices it. But yeah, like I feel it start to kind of like bead up in the back of my neck and stuff. It's awful. Yeah, Mark Zielinski, hello mate, nice to see you. You see, I think Fantasy Dead Zone should be great as well. I think I might just write the rules for it, mate. I might just do it myself as a bit of a fan-made thing. Graham Riggs saying Midland Miniatures. Yeah, Midland Miniatures is kind of, even Midland is very much more board gaming as well, to be fair. I know they make some miniatures themselves. There's a store not too far from me. I wouldn't class it as Newcastle though, it's more North Shields, which is a Northumbrian tin soldier, and they do some of their own castings as well. They're probably more of a miniature store, but I wouldn't say it was kind of like a destination store. It's not the kind of place that if you were traveling you would make a point of getting something like from there kind of special, if you like. I mean, you might do, it depends on the kind of miniatures you like. So check out Midland Miniatures and check out Northumbrian Tin Soldier, and if the stuff that they sell is the kind of obscure, unusual type stuff that you like, they might be worth a visit. But they're not in Newcastle City Centre. They're both, one's like Gateshead and one's in North Shields, so they're a bit of a drive from Newcastle. Shane Dwyer saying Beanie Games at Stockton is his go-to. Yeah, Beanie Games is good. I used to buy my original X-Wing stuff from Beanie Games. Yeah, Moxie in there as well. Yeah, if you hop on the Metro, you've got Midland and Northumbrian Tin Soldier. They're a bit out of the way though, mate. If you're coming to Newcastle for the day, for example, they're a bit out of the way, and they're not the easiest to find unless you're like familiar with the areas a bit. Yeah, Beanie does have a good gaming area. It's something that certainly Midland and Northumbrian Tin Soldier don't have. Moxie and his friendly little gaming store has a paint day. It's something you don't really hear about very much, mate. I think it's something more should have. Andy saying, I feel like vinegar is the flavour of England. Oh, I don't mind the taste of it, and I will still eat it sometimes, like on certain like things like sort of Chinese food can have a lot of like vinegar in it and stuff like that. So I still eat it, but it's not. Yeah, it's happening again. I can definitely feel it happening. Thompson, Rangers has a pre-scripted campaign as opposed to the procedural generation of 5 leagues. Jess saying, incidentally, did anyone see the new trailer for Willow? I didn't, mate. I haven't seen it. He said it's nice seeing a bit of his work turn out. I'll have to watch out for it now, mate. You'll have to tell me the bits that you've made. Dave says, I have the same issue with the head sweat, but with vacuum cleaners, hoovers, floor polishes, the noise sets me right on edge. It's weird, mate, innit? Life is a funny old place. Drogwin says, if someone would like to try Fantasy Dead Zone rules, mail me. I'd like to help testing it and translate it to German. You're on, mate. If I find I've got some spare time on my hands, I might try and convert it over at some point. I remember I had a conversation with Rob Berman a long time ago, and he converted Dreadball over to have fantasy races in it. So it was a bit like Blood Bowl, but with Dreadball rules. And I think I've still got them somewhere. I don't know if anything ever happened with it. But yeah, I'd like to see a fantasy version of Dead Zone. I think you could almost port it over, like pretty much like for like. So instead of obviously having like long range weapons like guns and stuff, you can basically have like sort of magic spells and things like that, couldn't you? Or you could have throwing weapons, for example, like arrows, like bow and arrows and that type of stuff. Like in the same way that instead of like you can still have blasts when you throw grenades and you blast stuff. Like you could still have like exploding kind of like sort of, you know, like bottles, like bottles of potions exploding and stuff like that. I think you could definitely do stuff like that. I quite like the idea of it. Shin Dwyer says, got to go, great topic and great discussion. Thank you for coming in, buddy, much appreciated. Jason saying solo is a good way to learn a new system. Absolutely, mate, which is something I was mentioning before. Super Pokemans, I used to teach painting at one of his local game stores. $5 got you a mini and it's 8 Citadel paints. I'll tell you what, mate, that must have been some time ago. Andros is saying fantasy can still have cannons and muskets. Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, of course you still get shooting within Kings of War as well, so you can still have that kind of there is still shooting units, isn't there? So yeah, so I think there's a way you could definitely kind of port it straight across. I think the only thing that you would struggle with initially would be like fantasy terrain that is multi-level. Like I wonder how you would make. I guess you'd have to make you make them like kind of fantasy buildings, wouldn't you? I suppose things like castle ramparts or something like that, or yeah, that kind of stuff. I'll have to give it some thought. Dave says Rob's off to try get clever now, back to uni. He's gone to uni, mate, but he works for the uni, so he's actually got a job where he is basically in charge of like donors, like, you know, so when you get people who like donate money to universities and stuff, like ex alumni and sort of corporate donors and stuff, he's in charge of kind of bringing that money in and stuff. So he's not going to uni to do any qualifications. He's actually working for the university. So yeah, that's what he's doing these days. Whew. It's getting hot in here, and I think it's just the vinegar sweats. Mark saying some of the Frostgrave terrain is multi-level. Of course, you've got wizards. There's always levitation. Yeah, I think the thing with Dead Zone is it's very three-dimensional, but it's also like 3x3 cubes, and it will be about. I mean, you could obviously use like Dead Zone terrain and maybe try and dress it up a bit with like bits of wooden cladding and stuff like that. But it'd be nice to try and, you know, like stone walls and stuff. I wonder. It'd be nice. I wonder if we can make some 3D printed stuff. I'll have to give it. I'm overthinking it now. I'll have to. Yeah, Jesse and ruined buildings. That's kind of what I was thinking, mate. You know, like almost like, you know, like the steps in castles and stuff like that, and like sort of like twists and turns inside the castle walls and stuff. I'll have to give it some thought and see if there's anything I can use. Definitely something I could 3D print. I'm not much of a scratch builder, so I probably wouldn't do it like that. But I reckon I could maybe get some help and design some 3D walls or something like that, or, you know, even just 3D cubes with like cobbles on the side and stuff like that. I wonder if I could get a couple of factions, port the rules over for a couple of factions and go from there. Phil Campbell says, cheers for the stream, Andy. Night, folks, and take care. Thank you very much, mate, for coming in. Drogwin says, and this three-dimensionality, if that's the word, is what I really like about Dead Zone. Yeah, I agree, mate. I agree. It's the fact that you have, like, it's a very small playing surface, but actually the area that you play on is much bigger than the initial, like, sort of, the initial visuals of it, purely based on the being able to kind of, like, move around and up and down and, like, move around the board. I like the fact that you can kind of move around the board. Andros is saying ancient cities like Babylon and Persepolis, is it, have multiple levels. Yeah, I think it's just about there's a lack of terrain suitable for that at the minute. That's what I would say at the minute. VG says, where are these Dead Zone solo rules? Let me have a little look for you, mate, because I am pretty sure if we go, let me flick across to here. Everything's already set. Oh, yeah, I'm good. Like, I tell you what, I'm good to you lot, you know. I think about these things in advance. If you come to the Mantic site and go to news, today's blog, did it mention it in the blog today? Was it in, no, it might have been somewhere else. Somebody might have posted it. I'll tell you what, let me just, I'll go off screen there, and I'll go back. I saw it somewhere. Let me have a look. I think did somebody post it in our group today? I go to, let's go to Dead Zone Fanatics and see if I can find it. I think somebody shared it today. So I'll quickly just scroll while we're chatting here and see if anybody, I'm sure somebody shared a link to it. There it is. So tabletopgaming.co.uk, and what they have is an underground solo adventure with the Veerman. So basically it's let me have a look. Tells you a little bit here. how to play it and stuff like that. I think it's actually in the magazine as well. So if you're buying the magazine, you certainly can do. Tells you a little bit here how to deploy, victory conditions. So what I'll do is, I'll tell you what, I will copy that link there, and I'll post it in the chat. Let me just. Will I, oh, the link is too long. Let me get a short version of that link, and I'll post it for you. That's clever, isn't it? When the link is so long, you can't bloody do it. Give me a second, folks. Shorten your link. Shorten. Copy. There we go. The things I do for you lot. There you go. There should be a link there in the chat now that you can be able to click on. If you click on that, it will take you through to the solo campaign or the solo scenario for Dead Zone, so you can play that one. Dave says broken spires would give plenty of height. Yeah, I think like the towers and stuff like that, like old wizards towers and stuff with like broken sides, as if there's been dragon attacks like blasted out and things like that. I'd like to be able to do something like that. Maybe something to think about for the future. Welcome back, Matt. Mighty Dice says, sorry, but I'm going to have to call it a night. That's alright, buddy. Don't worry about that. Nice to see you. Visually saying Veeman against Veeman should be fun. To be honest, mate, I mean, Veeman are pretty vicious. I can imagine the kind of hunting packs. I'm sure they would have reasons to be fighting against other Veeman packs. Mark saying you could also use stackable flat-roofed buildings similar to Assassin's Creed. Tricky to find though. Sarissa have some MDF ones in their Mediterranean range. Yeah, I think it's something where scratch building will obviously be easy to do as well. Like if you can get like 3x3 blocks of wood even, and just kind of cut them into different heights, you could probably decorate the outsides of them just to get a basic game going. And you'd obviously just use Dead Zone terrain to try it out, kind of thing. But I think. Look, there could be something in it. I think it's a bit of a long-term plan, but I think it sounds like there's a bit of interest in it. What are we up to here? Yeah, Jez saying what a cool thing. Yeah, would be, mate. V says, speaking of Sarissa, I got the email from Kickstarter asking me to pick my 3 dice towers. I didn't know you'd backed anything from Sarissa, mate. There you go. Where were we before? Yes, that's where we were. So, what I wanted to do was very quickly flick across back to here. So, if you haven't joined the BlackJack Legacy Firefight Slow Grow Army Challenge yet, yes, that's a mouthful, please do come over. You'll find the group on Facebook here. Basically, if you're interested, is basically to build and paint a 1,000 point firefight army for Mantic's Firefight. Between now, because it started on the 1st of September, and the 30th of November. So you've still got plenty of time to do it. There's a few little kind of mini little sort of milestones to hit along the way, and then we're going to have a bit of a celebration day at Mantic HQ on December the 3rd, he says. Trying to remember the date. Yes, it is Saturday the 3rd of December, it says there. So if you're not already a member of the group, again, I will find a link for it. In fact, if I just click on that, click copy that, and then I'll pop that in the chat as well. If you want to join the firefight campaign, the firefight slow grow campaign, sorry, that would be awesome. But yeah, we're up to, he says, we're up to 171 members now, which is awesome. I think it's been going since the 1st, so less than 2 weeks it's been going. We're up to 171 members, and we're getting loads. As you can see, there's loads and loads of cool stuff. People have been painting up already. People have been sort of testing out some paint schemes. Some folks are just sort of getting the building stages done. We've also got, people painting up their leaders at the moment to get some initial colours. Some here from Matt Green. We've got Hal's been painting some stuff. David Hall with his Asterians. This stuff people have been picking up as well. There is a discount code if you want to buy some stuff directly from Mantic, there is a code in the group as well where you get 20% off your firefight stuff. It lasts until the end of this month, so please get in early and buy if you've got anything planned. So yeah, plenty of cool stuff happening. I think we've got every faction represented now. So yeah, loads and loads of stuff going on. Please do come and get involved and support other folks as well. So yeah, that would be cool. That would be cool. Where are we up to here? Jess is saying fantasy Adobe style buildings could work for it. Flat topped and multi-layered. Absolutely, mate. Yeah. Take it easy, Dave. Thanks for coming in, buddy. Mark Zielinski saying he's working on enforcers for the slow grow. Nice one, mate. Mark's also saying I had to take another call from work. So when do we start designing Fantasy Dead Zone? I tell you what, mate, it's something I'd like to do. I just need to give it a little bit of thought. I think about whether I've even got the time. I should be making more videos really, but we'll see. We'll see. I might do it in my spare time. Tabletop Ramble says I have a ruined wizard tower and palisade MDF set from TT Combat. The walls measure 3 inches high as well. Ooh, I have to check them out. I'll have to have a look at them ones. Yeah, and Drogwin's saying that he would like to help as well. Yeah, I'll tell you, we'll maybe have to try and like set something up and get like a little team looking at it and see if we can just, because what I'd like to do is not really kind of go overboard with it, almost just fantasize. He says, just fantasize Dead Zone, like just change it almost like word for word, and then just kind of just tailor it. If it's just word for word, then it's just Dead Zone, isn't it? But you know what I mean. Change some of the phrases, change some of the names of the like effect and stuff into basically Kings of War sort of names, and just do them that way. And I think we'll have to think about which models to bring into the game and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'd have to give it some thought. I don't know if it's something I've got time to really kind of commit to it, but I like the idea of it. Right, let me have a drink because my throat is dry as sticks. Yeah, Tabletop Rumble saying, yeah, ye old Dead Zone, I'm in. I think that there seems to be a little bit of passion for it. Be interesting to see, wouldn't it? Dogwin saying, sorry, have to leave today. Hope to hear about the Fantasy Dead Zone. Good night from Germany. Thanks for coming in, Dogwin. Really appreciate you coming by tonight. Jess says he's busy painting a dragon for the monthly paint challenge at the moment. He's been enjoying it. That's what it's all about, mate. Enjoying it. That's all that we want to hear from folks. What else do you want to talk about tonight, folks? I'll be honest, my well of subjects has run dry this second. We've still got loads of folks in. I'm still more than happy to keep streaming. My plan's to go for about another 15-20 minutes to 11 o'clock. So yeah, anything you want to chat about, get it in the chat. Let me know what you want to talk about. What I will do while you're kind of popping in your suggestions, we'll head back to what I was going to show you as well from the Mantic site, which was about Ambush, which is the new sort of smaller version of Kings of War that is going to be in the new Kings of War rulebook. So basically it's saying, yeah, brilliant for introductory games, teaching the game to others, or even a quick game if you're short on time. They explain a little bit more about the thought process behind Ambush. So as you can see there, that's probably like a rough idea of the size of game that you're going to be playing. It'd be perfect for things like the starter sets. And it says there's nothing like the spectacle of a 2,300 point Kings of War conflict, but the initial setup of 2 massive armies, basically, you know, it's getting to that stage is no mean feat. For some people, this process can take several months. Plus, there's a strong possibility they may lose the will to live or finish halfway through. I think a lot of people do get distracted. And what they're saying basically that this is a new life-changing experience for Kings of War. It's mainly due to the fact that Ambush can be used to play games from about 500 points and with a maximum cap at 995. And then once you've had that first juicy taste of rank and flank action, you might be more likely to scale up to larger games at 2,000 points and above. And it's saying that basically you won't have to paint up a lot of models for this. It's combined with the ban on hordes and legions, so you'll only really be doing troops. So you'll be able to smash through a bunch of troops and regiments to get your army ready for the tabletop in no time. And it says it means you can pick up an army box and you'll have more than enough units, options to get the army on a table and start playing. and they're seeing that as a way to kind of recruit new players into Kings of War. He says you can even play it on a 3-foot by 3-foot table. This is something that really interests me, actually. I'm starting to kind of look at games and footprint size and like investment in time of getting them to the table as well. And I think that this could be interesting. And what's he saying for things like for veteran players, for people who play more often? Maybe it's the thing where, you know, you fancy picking up a new army, but you don't want to commit to buying and painting like 2,500 points worth. So maybe you just buy like a few boxes and get started and see how you feel and see how they play or something like that. So yeah, if it's something that you're interested in, there's going to be a little bit more information on the Mantic blog again tomorrow. And as you can see here, this is the red book is the Kings of War 2022 book, which is essentially a much updated version of the current Kings of War rules with all of the FAQ in there, all of the new points lists. It's now got this ambush rules in there as well. There are siege rules in there. There's all sorts of stuff going into it, as has been mentioned, and that's going for pre-order. And I think that comes out in October. So yeah, something to look forward to. Let's have a little thing here. Jess is a fearful battle in a dead city. Welcome to the Dread Zone. Ooh. Oh, what would we call it? What would we call it? Oh, I'd have to think of a cool name for it. Spylaw says, "What's the painting challenge? Had fun painting the Queen the other day, so I might be up for it." This month's painting challenge, mate, is the title or the theme is Forgotten. So basically, you have to paint something that you've kind of forgotten about. Have you got an old model that's been at the back of the cupboard that you forgot to get round to? Is there a model that's been half finished and it's been lying on your desk for months on end and you've just forgotten to get round to it? That's what I want you to paint this month. And VJ says, I obviously can't think of anything or I wouldn't have forgotten it. Andros is saying, anyone seen the Rings of Power or House of Dragon? I've not seen either of them yet, mate. I have been, what have I been watching lately? I watched the series with my wife, which was absolute garbage, and that was The Devil in Ohio, I think it was called. Really didn't enjoy it, but we pushed our way through and watched the whole thing, expecting for it to get better, and it didn't. Didn't enjoy that. I've been watching Welcome to Wrexham on Disney Plus. That's been pretty good if you're a bit of a football fan. That's not a bad show. I've been watching Mike on Disney Plus as well, which is like Mike Tyson's kind of life story, dramatized a bit, but I've been enjoying that as well. That's got a few more episodes to go. I've been watching She-Hulk. I quite like that as well. I think it's a bit of a different pace from most of the Marvel stuff, but I am enjoying it. I think it's quite fun, very kind of light-hearted, nothing too serious. What else have we been watching? Anything else? American Horror Stories. Been watching the new series of that. There's 2 episodes been out so far. That's been pretty good. But yeah, I've not watched any of the fantasy stuff. Invisible says, evening peeps, hope you're all having a good night. You too, mate. Thank you. Welcome for joining the chat. I hope you're all having a good night as well. VJ is saying, yeah, he's watching Rings of Power, House of Dragon, She-Hulk, and What We Do in the Shadows, or he's viewing at the moment. Spylaw said he's going to have to dig deep. He's got a pretty good memory. Mark says, is the ambush mode replacing Vanguard? It's not, mate. Vanguard's still going to stay around. Vanguard is a skirmish game. It's a very different kind of game altogether anyway, with individual models. This lower point cost ambush for Kings of War is more seen as an entry point to get people up to full games of Kings of War. Because if you think about how Dead Zone and Firefight are different sort of rule sets completely. However, if you have a Dead Zone sort of faction, you can quite easily grow that into a Firefight faction. The difference was if you had a small faction for Vanguard, it didn't really lean itself to things like multi-basin and kind of like sort of rank and flank. It was a very different experience, and it wasn't as easy to kind of flick backwards and forwards between them. So I think this is what they're doing. They're trying to kind of use ambush as the entry point, as the taster, to get people up into the bigger scale games. But Vanguard is very much still there. Mark says he's been playing 500-point games since first edition. Yeah, I kind of wish I'd been playing more 500-point games, mate, to be fair. Where are we up to here? Let's just skip ahead there. Tabletop Rambles recommending some solo games there. Core Space, Ark World, Rangers of Shadow Deep, Stargrave, Star Wars Imperial Assault, Lord of the Rings, LCG, and Oathsworn. Thank you, mate. Yeah, VJ saying Star Wars Imperial Assault is great solo. Mark says, did they see how many pages the new book is? Let me have a quick look, mate, and see if it tells you in the where was it? In the book itself. I think it was. Does it tell you in the explanation part? No, I don't actually think it does, mate. I don't think it does tell you how many pages is in it. No, doesn't. Oh, is that it there? No, doesn't tell you, mate. I did see a page or a post somewhere where it basically had the content list, but I must admit I can't remember if that had page numbers on it. Invisible says one of the things I like most about Mantic is the quality of their sculpts is getting better as time goes on. 100%, mate. I'd agree with that as well. I think the quality of their minis, especially these days, is up there with everybody else now. The problem is that they've still got some kind of old sculpts lying around, and that's what everybody remembers, unfortunately. Jess says this is a good idea for Kings of War. I'd agree with it as well. Yeah, Dread Zone or Undead Zone. I'll have to think of something more fantasy-esque, I think. Christian saying Rings of Power's weak, though pretty to look at. Not including yesterday's episode. House of the Dragons being exquisite. I'm still miles behind on Game of Thrones. I haven't watched all of Game of Thrones, so I feel like it feels like it's not something I want to get involved in until I understand the rest of the lore. Game of Thrones, rather. Marx is really wishing you Ambush came with pre-made minis, like a Song of Ice and Fire miniatures game. Yeah, I know what you mean, mate, but I guess if you're buying like one of those 2-player starter sets for Kings of War, and there's been a few different versions, so if you've got like different army choices, I think they're probably a good point to kind of get in and play Ambush with, to be fair, if you're a new player. Where I think the problem with those 2-player starter sets were everybody plays at like 2,500 points, 2,300 points, so those starter sets were just a little bit like they weren't quite big enough. Where when it comes to Firefight, you buy one of those like mega armies or whatever, even the starter set, you're pretty much up there playing like almost 1,000-point battles straight away. Mark says, anyone else hearing music? You should be hearing music, mate. Yeah, there's music in the background. VG says, guess I'm just easily pleased I'm enjoying both Rings of Power and House of Dragon. Fantasy Dead Zone will replace Vanguard. It might do one day, mate. Who knows? We might all be famous, eh? I don't think we'll be famous for ripping off Dead Zone's rules, to be fair. VJ saying, mind you, I'm not a Tolkien obsessive, so I'm not as anal about the rings as some. Yeah, I'm not really a fan of Lord of the Rings. I mean, do I need to really do I really need to understand the Lord of the Rings stuff to be able to like appreciate this Rings of Power or whatever it's called? It's something I might watch, but I must admit I'm not really like a Lord of the Rings fan in the big scheme of things. Type 40 TARDIS is Fantasy Dead Zone. When empires clash, the front lines sweep through the countryside. Into these lawless frontiers march your men to like a dead zone and no man's land. These little kind of sort of ruined castles and stuff where they're basically like people are trying to come and sort of recapture the lands. Oh, I quite like that, mate. No man's land. I'll have to write that down. I'm going to have to write that down. That could be a good title. No man's land. There you go. See, we're spitballing now. We're doing all right. Clavak saying House of Dragon is much better than I was expecting, and Jess says he's looking forward to Rings of Power and House of Dragon when he gets back, but he reckons that Willow series looks good. I think I'd probably prefer Willow, mate, to be fair. Spiderlord says I hear great stuff about House of Dragon, but I refuse to watch it until George finishes the next book. You might be waiting some time, mate. Yeah. Andros is saying Willow looks charming as hell. Spylos is just binge the living crap out of Cobra Kai. I forgot that was on there now as well. I need to catch up on that. I also need to see Thor: Love and Thunder. I've not seen that yet either. And yeah, VJ saying Cobra Kai's out as well. Yeah, Andros says you don't need to get into the Game of Thrones. It falls apart in the last 3 seasons and makes you regret. I think the problem is I haven't seen the best of Game of Thrones. I haven't got like the important parts of the story yet. Christian saying you don't need to watch Game of Thrones to watch House of Dragon. So is it not like sort of self-referential? I always find with these kind of things where when they have like a prequel type thing, like it's assuming like there's almost an assumption that you know like who these characters become, or you like knowing who they are in the future or whatever, or knowing who like their children or all that kind of stuff is part of it, really, to be fair. And I think that's why I haven't bothered, really. I just assumed I didn't have to. And he said it's probably better you aren't a Lord of the Rings fan to watch Rings of Power. I might give it a try then in that case. Tom says Rings of Power has been a bit of a trigger for folks who think that black people and women shouldn't exist in fantasy. They're wrong and they're on the wrong side of history. I've seen a lot of that on Twitter, to be fair. I've not really seen many people saying whether they like the show or not. I just seem to see people on either side of that conversation, basically. VG says I would definitely call myself a Lord of the Rings fan, but only since the movies, so I'm not as tied to the background lore as the grognards. Yeah, I think some people are kind of like sort of definitely very invested. I guess it's anything with these kind of big epic fandom type stuff, where it might be Star Wars, it might be Star Trek, it might be Lord of the Rings, and kind of that kind of stuff. People get really invested in it, don't they? Mark says, blimey, took the whole stream to glue 10 Goliath models. I tell you what, mate, some of those models are like that. Spylord says, the writing's appalling and shows all the conceits of modern storytelling. It does look quite good, though. I think I'm a bit more easily pleased, if I'm honest. I don't tend to take my TV viewing and stuff all that seriously. Like, as long as there's a story there and it's not massively full of plot holes, I'm generally pretty easy pleased. The worst thing I've watched recently has been that Devil in Ohio, and there was just so many kind of like parts of the story where it was like why is that a problem? Why is that causing an issue? Why is that even in the story kind of thing? It doesn't add anything to it. Why is that character acting in that way? Why is it so slow? Why is it about a big cult? But they don't even appear in it until about the 7th episode. That kind of stuff. Thomas in the air. People complain about the laws being changed. I guess that, I mean, stories are living things, aren't they? I'm not necessarily a religious person, but like the Bible's been rewritten a few times. You know what I mean? Like, as far as kind of ancient books go, it's not like you know, people's opinions change, stories change, people's interpretation of things change. That's the whole point of things, like, changing over time. It doesn't necessarily kill what's gone before it. It's a different interpretation. It's a different understanding of it. It's a different opinion of it. Yeah, VG says people need to relax and just enjoy it for the entertainment that it is. I agree. Yes. Tasty Brain Train says, I can tell you why the show is bad. It's set in Ohio. To be honest, I don't know if it's based on a book or something like that, but it could have been set anywhere, to be fair, for what little impact the fact that they were in Ohio had on it. Yeah, Tasty Brain Train says he's kidding to all the people from the Buckeye State. Yeah, it didn't really need to be the case. That was the whole point. So yeah, I think we've pretty much put the world to rights there tonight. I think we've covered all sorts. We've covered vinegar sweats. We've covered tabletop gaming. We've loved a little bit of all sorts of stuff as well. Rich made good evening, mate. He says absolutely love some solo board games. Got me through lockdown when I first started them, and not put them down since. There you go, mate. And Paul saying they've been a Tolkien purist. There's a lot about Rings of Power I don't like, including diversity casting. But I watched it and the actors aren't really bad. That kind of stuff doesn't really bother me, I'll be perfectly honest. Everybody can interpret and tell the story a different way, but then I'm not a person that gets massively hung up on like kind of on lore and background and gets really attached to a story that somebody else wrote. Maybe if I'd wrote it myself, I might feel a bit more strongly about it. Anyway, take care, folks. There'll be more videos coming this week. If you missed the main point of tonight's chat about the solo board, about solo wargaming, please check out tomorrow's clips version of it. Even if you saw it today, stick it on in the background and watch it again, because it helps push it out to others. If you haven't liked tonight's video, please give it a like. It really does help me to kind of to branch out, and sort of YouTube goes, people like it, and sends it out to a few more folks. Also, if you're not a subscriber, please do click the subscribe button. Don't forget, if you're not a member of the Facebook group, the Blackjack Legacy community group, please come over and join the group there, and you'll get to chat to folks all through the week. If you want to join the fight, what's it called again? The Firefight Slow Grow Challenge as well, please come over and do that. If you're not following me on Twitter or Instagram, you can check me out there as well at BlackJack Legacy. And if you want to support the future of the channel and let me continue to do this full time, please do consider supporting me on Patreon. There's my sales pitch for the night. So take care, folks, and I'll see you all in the next video.